close to the bed. He reached and pulled the damp towel down, then tossing it as she watched in amazement as it sailed across the room like a football pass with it resting in a corner inside a chair. She stood with her hands to her side, flexing her fingers, more terrified than she thought she would be at being naked in front of Tracker. She wondered why she had gone against her principles and sneaked out of the house to meet and be with the notorious and well-publicized bad boy werewolf of Samsaville. As her mother slept, she dressed in the dark and climbed out the window and walked and ran into town. She had heard that Tracker sometimes frequent the club, but she didn't know that he would be there that night until she heard his brother Damon whisper to a werepanther that Tracker and Thorn was coming, and they wanted to party. Now she finds herself with the one werewolf she had wanted since she was a freshman, and he was a senior in high school, Tracker Samsa. Tracker's breathing grew loud as he gazed on the small, shapely human. Chapter 5. Get up, Tracker. It's 2 o'clock and Robert and Mina will be over here soon. Tracker rubbed his eyes and looked up. It was his father Lysel gazing down at him. I know what you did all night. I was once like you, sticking my dick in every werefemale and human female that wanted to be with a rich werewolf. But when you find that mate that makes you want to fuck no one but her, you will have found something special and perfect, especially for a werewolf. We have needs, and if our needs can't be met, then we turn into animals. The mates we choose helps to balance us between wolves and humans. I think I found someone like that last night, Tracker said to his father. Lysel, amazed to hear this from Tracker, sat on the side of the bed and listened. Then you're staying? No. I can't stay. I won't be of any use to her, the way I am. I would have to marry Sadia, and I can't be true to both of them. I would hurt Sadia and disappoint the woman I love. Is she werefemale or human? Does it matter? Tracker said as if the last bit of breath had left his body. Lysel looked at Tracker and smiled. It really doesn't matter once you find your true mate. But if you leave, someone could come along and claim her. She's a human and she was a virgin, Tracker said, sitting up smiling at his conquest. You know how they are. Yes, I know. And what about Robert's daughter, Sadia? I'll just have to tell him how I feel. Things are not done that way anymore. His girls are werefemales who are at mating age. If you delay that by a few months, they may mate with humans. It will upset the balance in our pack. Because Robert's girls are the only known werefemales who aren't sterile, we thought it would be the best way to introduce new blood to further and grow more werewolf packs into the Americas. Lysel glanced at Tracker, trying to read his mind, hoping he had reached his stubborn son. When he glanced up at Tracker, he saw how his eyes wandered around the room, not hearing Lysel. Wilder had anticipated and Robert expected, Lysel paused, my boys to marry his girls. They have been protected from human males which wanted to date them. It was Robert's and Wilder's hope that they would mate and marry my sons. He waited for a reaction from Tracker. And it came sooner than he thought. I can't honor that, Father. Tracker sat up on the side of the bed, his long legs dangling as he prepared to stand. I can't do it. I want a human, and that's what I'm driven to. When I've settled down and traveled enough, then I'll come back home and find my true mate, impregnate her, or bring her here to meet my family. But for now, I want the human I met last night. And it will just cause confusion, so it's best that I leave. What will the female do once you leave? This girl will never leave me or have another. I know. I can tell. But Lysel wasn't as certain of Tracker's arrogant youthful beliefs and his ability to control females as Tracker was. Females are changeable creatures, controlled as much by the moon tides as werewolves are controlled by the full moon, and they need the love and protection of a strong male at their side, was Lysel's understanding of all things female. What do you know about females? I've forgotten more than you will ever know. All you know is that your young cock is eager to be fed. And looking at you, I'd say you satisfied your basic instincts last night. Lysel turned away, hoping Tracker didn't recognize himself in him where he would know the truth. The truth being that Lysel was ever as reckless or more than Tracker ever thought of being. She knew how to satisfy me completely. I can't be with one of Robert's daughters. He never allowed them to have boyfriends of any kind. How can Mina, their mother a werefemale, teach them how to satisfy a werewolf, and what a werewolf expects if their mother only had one male and he's a human? He was saving his girls for my sons. They were supposed to teach them what is expected and how to satisfy a werewolf. But look at the eldest now. Lysel gestured at Tracker with one hand waving in his direction. No doubt that human sucked your dick and let you plow her in the... Enough, father. If ever I mate or marry anyone, she will be the one for me. What's her name? I want to keep an eye on her. I know that you'll be back home after you have roamed around and fucked around, and you will want to see this once virgin again, Lysel said, his words and voice dripping with sarcasm. Tracker's eyes narrowed and his thick brows met. I have no doubt you will come home. This is your home. Don't forget that. Lysel's voice choked. It was the first time Tracker remembered his father sounding like a human. He wasn't all werewolf but a man as well. Lysel, standing, inhaled and took a good look at Tracker. He looked just like him at his age and was as out of control as Tracker is today. But when Wilder brought Adrian home, she managed to tame that wild beast inside of Lysel. Whatever you do, don't insult Robert. You have done enough of that by leaving here. And no talk about you falling in love. I know how stupid you young werewolves can get behind the smell of a young female in heat. He shook his head and cut a half-meaningless smile at Tracker before he left the room. Standing in the doorway before closing the door, he said, "Put some clothes on. I hear them now." Tracker heard them too. He heard them talking, but he was groggy and didn't spend the time to tune in to their voices. He rushed into the shower and then dried off and opened his closet door. Leather pants. Is that all he had? And then he remembered his jeans from high school and his flannel shirt. As he pulled them out and looked at the pants, wondering if he could fit into them. Pulling them up, he managed to get them on. They were a little tight, but they fit nonetheless. His shirt was larger than he expected across the shoulders and sleeves. Adrian had bought them that way because his shoulders were always wide, and his arms were long and growing every day, and there was no sign of them slowing down. The pants were tight, but the shirt was over large, and it would cover the budge of his oversized cock. Even the night of bliss in the body of the human girl couldn't lessen its size. Because every thought of her, and what he did to her, kept him hard. He thought of her now even as he had to face Sadia and Robert. He tried to think of something else, for example, what he was going to say to Robert and Mina. He rushed around the room looking under the bed for a pair of shoes. He had left his shoes and suits at Hunter's apartment, telling him to give them away. No one could wear a size 13 anyway, and he wouldn't need them anymore. His boots were all he had, and his mother didn't like when he strutted around the house in motorcycle boots. Adrian felt that when Tracker wore his boots, he would leave at any minute. This made her sad and uneasy. Tracker decided to walk around barefoot. After all, he was a werewolf, and he was in his house, so why did he have to pretend to be something he wasn't? That was another thing he couldn't get used to. His mother, Adrian, had tried to make an educated, sophisticated man out of him, and he rebelled along with Thorn and Damon. His 3 other brothers in prestigious universities accepted their roles in the pack, as well as what their mother wanted from them. Adrian tried to prevent Tracker from playing football, but he discovered he was great at that, and he convinced Lysel to let him do what came natural, and he did, along with the hero worshipping from all the girls and his 2 brothers Damon and Thorn. With Damon and Thorn, Tracker could do no wrong, as long as they were part of the wrongdoing. Chapter 6. Trudging down the stairs was like going to his death. He wished he could avoid having to face Robert and Mina. And not to mention what's her name. Tracker never thought about her twice. He remembered seeing her vaguely in high school, a lowly freshman werefemale with thick eyebrows. Too quiet and protected for his taste. Aside from that, he never paid attention to her. Tracker had made up his mind early when he spotted Sadia walking down the stairs at Samsaville High, that she wasn't for him. She was too shy and had dark hair and a small oval face that was eclipsed by large black glasses. She had a cute face and a small body, and little else that he could remember. She had nothing that could handle the overpowering magnificence of his face and body. If he had dated her, which he wouldn't, they would have been an odd couple. Sadia wouldn't be undone. She would show up near his locker, look at him with her big brown eyes, but never say a word to him. Maybe it was because he had several girls, he would brace up against the locker. That was his way of letting her know that she didn't have a chance in hell with someone like him. He wasn't looking for the quiet, demure type, and what kept her out of the running for his attention, she was a werefemale. She should have gotten the hint what he was after, humans. But Sadia never did. She just followed him around and showed up at the most inconvenient time. Like the time he convinced the teacher to suck his cock behind the cafeteria during his lunch break. She may have been the one who alerted the guard. Tracker was ashamed to admit that the young freshman with the thick eyebrows was promised to the most famous, rich football hero in high school in the state. He had cars and horses and a body to die for, and many girls professed that they would die if they couldn't fuck him. But they couldn't, because Lysel kept a check on Tracker and the others. If he thought they were paying too much attention to girls and not enough to their studies or sports, then he would take them out of school and cart them off to Alaska, where he would teach them how to survive in the wilderness. After a few seasons of that, they were happy to keep their eyes peeled on what mattered the most: their education and their devotion to their pack. However, Lysel can't be blamed for what happened to Tracker. He was wild and a loner, the likes of his father and Uncle Wilder. A lone wolf, and a rebel who couldn't be satisfied by just the adoration of one female. Entering the large family room with Adrian sitting on the middle of the extensive white sofa, and Wilder flanking her on one side and Lysel on the other side, across sat Robert and Mina with a somber look on her face. Tracker glanced around for Sadia, but he didn't see her. He closed his eyes for a second, thinking he was out of the woods and he didn't have to face her. Standing behind the sofa where his father and mother sat facing Robert and Mina, he said, "Are we missing someone?" Robert looked at him, remembering when he last saw Tracker lying half dead, with blood covering his chest where a bullet made a nasty exit. His eyes half closed, and he gaining consciousness after hours of Robert working on his body to keep him alive. Robert had taken care of him, and saved his life after driving hours bone-tired, when Tracker had been shot by a furious, jealous husband. "I'm surprised you remembered," Robert said with a hint of sarcasm. His voice dry, tired, and hard like the expression on his face. Then Tracker, embarrassed, scanned the room to see the steely glance of Wilder and Lysel peering at him, and the disappointment filling his mother's eyes. "Sadia is up with Drayton feeding his baby," Mina answered as she placed her hand over Robert's. She sensed the hostility Robert had for Tracker, and she didn't want it to get out of hand. "Did someone call my name?" The voice said, fragile and silky. Almost beyond sexy and beyond sensuous. It made Tracker's body quiver with desire. Tracker didn't want to turn around. He didn't need to turn to see the beautiful face behind that lovely voice. He knew that voice, and it wasn't the weak voice of the young girl in high school. He could have been wrong, but it was the voice of the girl he met in the club, and when he took her by the hand and asked her, "Have you ever been fucked by a werewolf?" she had answered, "No. But I'm willing to try anything first." And she did. She let him take her all night long, and she gave him as good as he gave her. That was the sultry and sexy voice he remembered, and the voice of the female standing behind him. But Tracker did turn and gaze into a pair of golden brown eyes that sparkled when the sun hit them. It had been night and in a club full of noisy shifters who were drunk, but today it was day, and he could see her clear. Surprisingly, she wasn't drunk. Surprisingly, she didn't bother to give him her name, and he didn't ask her either. She moved to the side of Tracker and locked eyes with him. Looking at her standing near him, his cock yearned to be in her again. She smiled, and her beautiful lips caught his eyes, and he remembered how his large penis had penetrated not only every part of her body, but especially that part that opened so slowly, and he had so easily and so patiently fed her mouth with his semen. And she had taken it and smiled. At that moment, when he had time to think, he felt betrayed. He tried to hide his displeasure by smiling at Robert. "I'd like to speak to Sadia alone. Can you grant me that?" Robert shook his head yes. He agreed only because Mina shook her head yes to him. Adrian began chatting about the weather to calm everyone as Tracker took Sadia by the arm. Smiling, he opened the glass door. They stepped outside in the cool air, the sun striking her eyes, making them golden. Tracker led her to the pool. He stood looking down at the pool, and she looked up at his face. With his back to the audience and the smile wiped from his mouth, Tracker's head turned quickly to glare at Sadia. However, Sadia still smiled softly. "You tricked me. I thought you were a human," he said, agitated. His words icy and firm. "Is that the only reason you would have considered marrying me? Then yes, I tricked you," she said without apologizing. She appeared proud of what she had done, and this made Tracker more enraged. "How did you manage to do that? Don't you know that a werewolf doesn't like to be tricked by a female, especially in that way?" "In what way?" she asked, keeping her composure, never raising her voice but looking at him adoringly. "You know what you did to me. You made me think you were a human. You dressed and talked and smelled like a human. That's my secret. And I don't care if you don't want me. I want you. I'm leaving and I'm not coming back here. And especially to someone like you." Sadia's wide smile turned into a tight smile. "Didn't I make you believe I was a human? I gave you what you dreamed of. A human to love you and take all you have to give. I did it and you didn't complain. I heard you whisper in your sleep that you love me. Werewolves don't sleep that deep. They do when they have found their mate. But I didn't want to be tricked. You are beautiful and sexy and you satisfy my lust. I would have found that out, but you couldn't wait. You had to resort to trickery." He raised his voice, and the dogs began yelping. He raised that one eyebrow and narrowed the gaze of his blue eyes, which had turned to a deep dark blue. "You were leaving. When would you have discovered that I'm the only one for you? I was wrong about you last night. You will never be for me. When I tell my family and yours what you did and how you deceived me, they won't be on your side." "I don't think you would be that cruel," Sadia said, calling his bluff. If there was one thing about the Samsas, they were possessed with integrity and respect for females, at least on the surface. "Can you be sure everyone will take your side? My sisters knew I could shift and disguise my scent. I thought you were the one who could detect I wasn't human. If anyone could do that, it should have been you to figure it out, and yet you couldn't. You didn't have a clue, Tracker." She laughed and made fun of his name as she pronounced it, making Tracker angrier than before. His eyes narrowed and his mouth hit a hard line. Another eyebrow raised as he peered at her like a hungry animal who had run down his prey and was ready to kill and eat it. Tracker sucked in a deep breath and calmed. He turned his back, facing the exit leading out of the pool area. "I'm leaving, and you and no one can stop me." "You can go. I don't want to stop you. If you don't want me, I don't want you, and I will tell my father, and he will understand. And I will be free to be with someone else. Now go." Her voice broke, but Tracker didn't hear her. He had shut his mind to Sadia. When Tracker reached the gate, he turned to watch at Sadia, if just to take one look and remember last night when he felt more alive and more of himself, human and animal, than any time in his life. Her beautiful little face etched in his memory as he entered her body, making him aroused and overcome with carnal pleasures no woman had made him feel. But it took a werefemale to make him feel so alive. And he couldn't and didn't want to believe it. Now all he could think of was that she deceived him. Just as quick, he turned around and headed out of the gate where his motorcycle was setting. He climbed on it, started it up, and roared down the road and out of the Samsa's property. He didn't say goodbye to his mother, nor his father or brothers. He needed to clear his head, and when he looked up, he was 100 miles out of Samsaville, headed down Interstate 80 once again. He didn't know where he was going, and he didn't care. All he thought about was trying to get out of his mind the pictures of Sadia, and how he could forget her, and that night. He knew if she kept haunting his days and nights that it would soon become impossible to stay away from her, and he didn't want to go back home. At least not now. Not under these circumstances.